Greetings from Toronto, Ontario. I am Shmuel Neft, otherwise known as Rabbi NFT.
And I'm Dovey Keebman, joining you from Erie, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Millennial Rabbis Podcast.
As Chabad Rabbis born in the 90s, we bridged the gap between two very distinct Jewish communities on opposite shores of Lake Erie.
Join us as we navigate the complexities of the modern world, offering fresh perspectives on the challenges we face today.
Let's make sense of it all together. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another amazing episode of Millennial Rabbis Podcast. You will notice that on the other side of the screen today, and those who are listening will hear a different voice, we don't have my usual host with us today, Rabbi Keebman, Dovey. I very much do miss him, and we'll see him in 2 weeks. I promised last episode we're going to have a surprise, and the surprise is just this. Millennial Rabbis Podcast is shifting shapes a little bit. We're going to keep doing 2 monthly podcasts, but every other podcast is going to have a special guest, a different millennial rabbi, a friend, colleague, acquaintance, somebody out there, and essentially whoever just says yes in time. And Moshe, you fit the bill because you said yes before anybody else. We're going to talk about
hard to get.
What?
I thought I was hard to get.
You were. And you definitely
kidding.
were. It was definitely hard to get you on. So thank you for coming on. Sitting across from me, located not actually across from me, but located in sunny and already humid Orlando, Florida, just outside of Orlando, and we'll get into that. Mr. Rabbi Moshe Dubinsky. Moshe, welcome to the podcast. I know you're a big fan. I know you're a big fan yourself. So you're probably like beside yourself to be on the podcast finally. So we're happy to have you. Let's go back. So we have two main audiences of MRP and two people that we want to target. Number one is our communities. Dovey has his small town community, and I have my big city community. And our goal is that each of our communities will get insight to see what it's like to live in Jewish community and have Jewish life in other places outside of where we are. For me, I think that's a huge goal because in Toronto, I've come to realize that people in Toronto perceive Judaism as it is in Toronto, right? And only when they leave Toronto, they realize, oh, Jewish life is actually a lot different depending where you go, right? Here, people are used to big synagogues, Chabad houses. I'm saying half of the Chabad houses here in town are massive buildings with massive crowds. You got high holidays, 500, 600, 700, sometimes 1,000 people in one Chabad house, right? And meanwhile, you have, just across Lake Erie, you got Dovey Keebman, who's hopefully getting, 20, 30 people for high holidays. You got you in a suburban Orlando, who's running a synagogue out of your house with a awesome backyard pool. I must say so myself. Came to enjoy it one time, and Moshe, by the way, we've got to come visit you again. But the point being is that my goal tonight is that, number one, our community friends will get insight about, number one, your lifestyle, your community, what Jewish life is where you are. Also get an insight in what some of my old friendships look like. You and I go way back, buddy. We've done a lot together. We've spent a lot of time together. And the second thing is the other audience of MRP, which is our friends and colleagues that like to listen and either pick fun at us or reminisce in the good memories. It happens to be 2 weeks ago, Dovey and I spoke about the Lag BaOmer parade in Crown Heights, and we brought up the last time that I was at a parade, which was 7 years ago. And on one of my friend groups on WhatsApp, one of the guys was like, wrote in honor of this week's episode, and like flooded the group with a bunch of pictures from that parade of all the guys from that group. So, it's awesome. I love doing this. Welcome.
We just spoke for 10 minutes straight. You know that, right?
Well, 4 minutes and 9 seconds. But
okay, I'm just gonna say, in your background for a podcast, a little shavach, buddy.
We're still learning.
What do you got there? Can you please turn around and tell us what you got? What's behind you? Do you have a table with what? Is that JLI books?
Those are some JLI books. Those are some picture frames that fell down. Right here are some newsletters that are going out to our supporters soon. And here we got my picture of the Rebbe, obviously, and my collection of Jews on the wall. Maybe one day you'll come visit. You'll join the collection. So Moshe, tell us, how old are you? Where you are originally from? Where are you living now? And how long you've been there?
All right. My name is. This is weird because, like, you know who I am, right? I'm speaking to you, but I know there's a crowd that's going to listen later. Okay. So my name is Moshe Dubinsky. I'm originally from Morristown, New Jersey. And together with my wife, we started a Chabad here 3 years ago. I'm in a suburb of Orlando. The city is called Claremont. The county is called Lake County. We're the only shluchim in the county at this point. And we're blessed. We're blessed to do the Rabbi's work here. We have, Baruch Hashem, quite a few Jews here. It's not Miami. It's not even Orlando. But we definitely have a crowd of Jews here. So Baruch Hashem, doing good work here.
Lake County it's actually. I realized when I went to visit you last spring, so just a few months over a year ago, I realized that it's called Lake County because there are a lot of lakes in your county.
We have two famous things of our county. First, it has the most lakes in the state of Florida. It also has per capita the most guns in the state of Florida.
Yeah, for all those Canadians, all our Canadian friends out there, yes, in Florida, things are different. Maybe we'll get there. But okay, so Moshe, you're from Morristown, New Jersey. People that know me, locally know I probably basically. I don't know if you know this, but one of the main attractions of coming, like to my house for a Shabbat meal or like interacting in events, whatever, is within 5 minutes. If I'm talking to you already for 5 minutes, by the 5-minute mark, I'm already telling you some story from usually from the Bucker years, because those years were prime. And that's where we met. We were both in yeshiva in Morristown. You're from Morristown and you went to yeshiva in Morristown. You're from Morristown because your father is an educator, teaches in that very yeshiva. Those who know me know about my Soviet adventurizing in those years. And my first trip to Kazakhstan was with you and David Zaltzman. We went there for Hanukkah, and I always tell people that it was on that trip that I actually decided to become a shliach, to become a Chabad Rabbi. That until then,
right?
and actually,
I did not know that.
Yes.
Tell me what episode. What was the episode that inspired you? Like, wow, this is the real deal.
It actually involves you. I don't exactly know where or when, but at some point in that trip, we were talking about shlichus and becoming rabbis and community activists in this part of the Chabad movement. And we were talking about what we're going to do in the future. And I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, but this moment I remember clearly. I said, well, if I go on shlichus, and then you're like, no. When you go on shlichus. That was you. And it was on that trip. It wasn't my fault. Very possible.
No, I wasn't. Okay, fine.
We said
we drank a lot of beer at Usk-Minogorsk. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, we drank a lot of beer. We went to the
remember our midnight Farbringen?
We had a lot of.
We all woke up.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We were super jet lagged.
Like 2 a.m. and on, we were all up. Like actually, it's really Saturday morning, but yeah.
The time difference is 11 hours, and we were beyond jet lagged. I have a video of you nodding off behind this sitting at a children's table, like one of those little kids tables in an apartment of a family that we came to one of the nights of Hanukkah to cheer up, bring some cheer to their home. And we ended up basically sitting down together. We brought some kosher food. We brought some l'chaim, and we sat down. And then I have pictures and video of you just totally nodding off at the kids' table. It's 7 p.m. I have to check the timestamp on my phone. But we have all that archived. Those were the.
Send it to me. I don't remember that. I mean, obviously I was sleeping.
So I don't know. I'm sure you. Okay, so you and I also grew up very different. I grew up, I grew up not observant. My family came to Chabad when I was a kid. Started becoming observant when I was a teenager. You come from Gezhech, Siddish stock. You were as Chabad as it, and I don't know, you probably don't feel comfortable pointing that out, but that's not the point. The point is you and your wife grew up on shlichus as well. in Florida. You probably grew up kind of with this notion that you want to go on shlichus, you want to serve as a Chabad rabbi somewhere. And maybe didn't know where. And it's funny to mention, your brother's also on shlichus, and he ended up, in the corner of the world in Costa Rica, but you ended up in Florida, and how it's funny how where life takes you. But I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you, as long as you can remember, you wanted to be doing this.
Yeah, so actually, I grew up Morristown, and as a teenager, I always knew that this is my dream. My dream is to be a shliach of the rabbi. My dream is to be there for the Jewish people. I remember as a young teenager, probably 9th or 10th grade in the yeshiva system, I remember learning a sikha of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe explains that when someone's in fire, when God forbid there's a house on fire, so you don't wait. You just start making calculations. Okay, how will I get the person out if God forbid someone's in there? You do whatever has to get done right now, right here. Stop thinking. Go do what you got to do. So to save the life, and the Rebbe used that parable as our modern day American life, where there's unfortunately many Jews that are falling off the holy Jewish way, and there's a fire burning, and our job is to be there and change world Jewry and educate. And it all begins with education, from youngsters to the older people. It all begins with education, allowing people to know the beauty, the joy. I always tell everybody here in our synagogue, we're here to teach the joys of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism, and not the oys of Judaism. And everybody laughs, ha, 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 ha. But it's true. It's true. Chabad is all about giving the joy, the love, the beauty of Yiddishkeit. I want to go back to what you said. I was brought up religious. It's true. My father's rabbi, my grandfather's rabbi. You go all the way back. Very nice. I really believe, number one, that it's a choice. It's a choice. If you want to be religious, it's a choice. It's a conscious and what's the right English word? Intentional thing to do. And I don't know why I went there. I had something in mind. But the point, though, is, I can make it up. Don't worry about it. The point, though,
you're getting to the point where it wasn't necessarily a given that you're going to be doing this.
No, most of my siblings work. I have mortgage brokers, realtor. I mean, you name it. I have a big family, Baruch Hashem. I have a bunch of therapists and social.
You have a lot of shluchim siblings as well.
I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 other Chabad rabbis in my family. I'm the number 5. Yeah. So yeah, Baruch Hashem, and this is the dream that I always believed I would do. I knew I wanted to do this. There's nothing, there's 2 aspects to this. I don't know if you want to hear my drushes.
This is all we want to hear.
So the first thing is, I believe in the dream. I believe what I spoke about before. I believe that there's a mission. There's a mission to save other Jewish people, give the joy of Judaism, to educate, bring the love, and give what Judaism has to offer. There's so much beauty and so much greatness that Judaism has to offer. And the second thing I always thought is there's no better life than being a giver.
I totally agree with that.
Physically, in other words, if you're the most egotistic person, right, and you're doing it selfishly, it would still be a good job. Because there's no better life than being there for others. And as a rabbi, I know as a doctor, as a therapist, and many other works, you also have this aspect. But when you're a rabbi, it's very colorful. I mean, the type of phone calls that you get time in, time out, who calls you, when they call you, what hours of the night, it's a colorful job. It is. And it's my dream. Absolutely my dream. There's no better life. I have the best life. I really do.
I'll quote I don't know. Do you know Levi Strugo? He's a few years younger than us. Okay, so Levi Strugo,
he's in, what do you call it, in Asia?
Taiwan now. So he and his wife moved to Taiwan.
Yeah,
he grew up the son of a Chabad emissary couple in Guadalajara in Mexico. And he actually worked for me when I was the head counselor in a day camp in Crown Heights one year. And he told me that he would never trade his upbringing for anything. Because he says the most valuable thing in his upbringing was that he saw his parents living for others. And by the way, if you go back to me for a second, how did I end up deciding that this is what and by the way, at that point, it was a flip of a switch. Now it could be because I didn't really have a plan what I was going to do. Right, I was in yeshiva. I wanted to be in yeshiva for a few years. What am I going to do afterwards? Okay, God knows. We'll see. But perhaps that's the reason. But I could tell you that at that point everything changed and my whole mindset changed, and I knew I only wanted to do one thing, and not only was that conversation, which was very powerful, but on that trip and on the subsequent trips that I took to Kazakhstan specifically, and I really attribute my life decision to do this to the shluchim in Kazakhstan, because I spent time around selfless people that literally put every luxury possible aside, and gave themselves completely over to their communities and also to their families at the same time. Very, very much family-oriented people that also, included in their family, their community family. I'll get vulnerable. I'll tell you, there's more than one time where I had to an experience or something that I saw or in a conversation that I had where I had to just check out and go cry in a corner and think to myself how amazing are these people? What kind of greatness am I? And sometimes it was because I was drunk also, but whatever.
Don't ruin it.
Around, right? This is what led me to want to do this as well. Now, give us a lowdown on Lake County. Okay, we went to yeshiva together, and then we kind of this life moves on. You get out of the system, and you get married. You married your wife, your amazing wife, and she's a native of Central Florida. Am I right? Cape Canaveral.
A little more south, but yeah, that area.
Space
south.
Coast.
It's called the Space Coast. Treasure Coast, yeah. So we got married. We moved to Israel a little bit, learned in Kailal, came back, and I'm a little extreme, I would say. So when I was engaged, I was already looking for shluchas opportunities. And the minute I got married also, I was way in calling shluchim, this and that. And we came back to the Space Coast after Israel for a few months, ultimately because we were dying to just go on shluchas. And I just want to clarify, when I say I mean we. My wife and myself were all in 100%. And this is also the dream of my wife, which that's another history there. But yeah, my wife, she was brought up with this. This is her bread and butter. This is what she wanted to do. And Baruch Hashem, thank God, this is what happened. So I moved back to Florida, and I rented an apartment near my in-laws in the Space Coast in Satellite Beach, Florida. I have amazing Chabad over there. And I always knew that probably not good working for others. So I immediately went on to try to find my own place where I could start a Chabad. And it took a long time. It took a year and a half about to finally nail down where we're going to go. I had to work with the Chabad here of Greater Orlando that are, the area of Central Florida generally, which is not the entire Central Florida, but most of it, Orlando area and the suburbs of Orlando. It's their responsibility to service the Jewish communities here. So, that's how we ended up in South Lake. Claremont, Florida. The attraction of Claremont, Florida is, number one, it's near Disney. And so there's a lot of people love to live near Disney. A lot of retirees come here because it's right near Disney. They go there often. It's like a very normal, I would say over half of my community are extreme Disney fans. And which
you ever been to Disney World?
Don't ruin it yet. I'm just going to say it's interesting because I'm just naive or lack of knowledge, but I never realized that Disney's for adults.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to tell you this. I always thought it's I'm from New York, New Jersey area, Six Flags, Dorney Park, Hershey Park. That's what I grew up with. But it was okay, so you go on rides and okay, there's some shows and you move on. But Disney's like a different world. It's like a city. It's like an entertainment city.
Oh yeah.
And so people here, their houses are designed with Disney characters and so on. So Disney's a big deal in our community. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that we're actually the only ridge line of the entire state of Florida, which is an interesting idea. We're actually the highest point of the state of Florida. I forget how high it is, like 170 feet up, whatever. It's not high. But the point, though, is there's lots of hills here. So for me coming from New Jersey...
I do remember I do remember that.
So for me coming from New Jersey, I love it. For my wife, that's regular, from a regular Floridian background, they like the flatlands. So here it's very hilly, up and down, all the way. So that's for a lot of people that are coming from, New York and New Jersey, the tri-state area. They love the hills. They like Florida because of the warmth. They like the hills. And so, Shmuel, your video's off. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
it's fine.
It's back.
We're good.
Technical difficulties. Yeah, technology.
Okay. So
by the way, for those who don't know, Morristown, New Jersey is like Hill Central.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful on that end, at least. So the point, though, is that so a lot of people are attracted to the hills. Also, it's near a city. It's a suburb. It's a very fast-growing suburb, but yeah, it is a suburb. And so that's the attraction of this area. And so we moved here almost 3 years ago now, Baruch Hashem. Our first event, let me take that back. We started about 3.5 years ago, but we only moved 2.5 years ago. So I used to drive in a few times a week, meet the Jewish people. And I don't know how long you want me to go. You can ask questions.
You've got me captivated so far.
So we started Chabad here, and I met Jews. I remember I met one Jewish person. I called him up because I got a list from another Chabad of some Jews in the area. And his name, we're going to make up a name. His name is Stephen. Just keep names out. And I said, "Hi, Stephen. My name is Rabbi Moshe Dubinsky, and together with my wife, we're starting Chabad here." Now, he was familiar with Chabad because he used to live in South Florida. He was very, very involved. In fact, he used to go to daily minyan. He says, "No effing way!" That was his response. So that was a beautiful welcome.
I wish people treated me that way, dude.
The beauty of this whole area is that every single Jew I met, I mean, until today, like 2 weeks ago, I sat with another family, and every single one is convinced that they're the only Jew in the entire South Lake. South Lake is south of Lake County. I'm the south part of the county. Every single one of them. And it's amazing. Baruch Hashem, just now in our house for Shavuos, we had over 60 people at our house for our party. And so many of those people look around, they're like, you're also Jewish? Like, how many Jews we got here? The point, though, is that Baruch Hashem, every single Jew that I wouldn't say every, but most Jews that we meet say, "Rabbi, how many Jews are here? Like, what are you doing?" And so we had to prove it slowly, and even until today, it's a struggle sometimes. And Baruch Hashem, we've been thriving. A lot going on here, and with Hashem's help, I'll have some big stuff going on, buildings and so on. Because
buildings. Yeah. By the way, I think it's time after 3.5 years to move out of your house.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it.
Although, by the way, a pool like that, who wouldn't want to go to shul? Although
it's not like we have services in the pool. Relax, buddy.
It's a good idea, maybe. That's what I hear. That's a lot. I hear this theme very commonly, even amongst colleagues here in town that live off the outside of the Jewish ghetto here in Toronto. That they go to a place and they start meeting people, and people start coming to these gatherings, and they can't fathom the fact that there are other Jews that live, in the same area. Some people even finding out that people that they know were Jewish or had, acquaintances are Jewish. They had no idea. That's an awesome thing. I think, how many stories are there of, people like us moving out to a new place and, instead of being greeted like your guy Steve greeted you, they're greeted with a lot of cynicism and suspicion, and the message that they're given to by whoever they encounter first, in their new locality is, "This isn't New York. Go back to where you came from. There's no one here. There's nothing for you to do here, right?" And you look at a place like Lake, like South Lake, South Lake County, and you're like, okay, it's a suburb. It's Central Florida. There's a certain type of caricature person that that lives in Central Florida, and it's like not Jewish, and Orlando's got somewhat of a Jewish scene. By the way, it's really nice kosher restaurants, great Chabads there. In Orlando, shout out Leivik, your cousin Leivik Dubov, coolest rabbi in Orlando, besides for you, at least for
watch yourself, buddy.
For the purposes of this podcast.
That's what you're gonna say? Oh man, we're gonna have to talk after this podcast.
But here you are, 30 minutes outside of town. It's a schlep to get to you. Who would even think there are Jews out there? And
it's not 30 minutes at this point. It's a lot longer because of the traffic. But yeah, it's like an hour. But
I remember
it's actually far in a sense.
I remember it being a schlep, although I was coming from a different direction, but nevertheless, it was a schlep because I was going through Orlando. Anyway, the point being that if it wasn't you, who's gonna do it, right? There
I
would
want
be
to tell you
nobody.
a fascinating story. Sorry, did I cut you off? You want to finish?
I want to hear your stories. I want to hear it.
So, as I said before, Shlichut, being a Chabad Rabbi, it's a very colorful job. The type of phone calls, the type of demands that people ask from you and so on is just sometimes very funny, sometimes not so at all. So we had an event, I can't remember if last year or 2 years ago. It was last year. Last year we had a Purim event for kids in my house, small little, Hamatosh bake, and we had like a horrible turnout. And like even before the event, it was a Sunday event. We had like 3 families that signed up, and like it was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? If there's 3 families, just don't do it. That's the way normal people think. But a Chabad Rabbi doesn't think like that. Even though we think like that, but we know that we're on a mission from the Rebbe, and every Jew really counts. Anyways,
by the way, it's not. I'm sorry to interject. It's not easy to make that decision of, or to switch into that mindset of, you just do it.
You have to remember that means you have to clean your house. No, we don't. We work out of our house. The bigger events we rent out locations, but generally we're out of our house. So you have to clean the house. The kids, you have your own kids to take care of, so you have to keep them, well behaved or whatever. There's so much preparation for a small event like this. It's like, oh my gosh, just screw it. Tell them that we're not feeling well, or tell them that we're just not doing it. No one showed up. I don't know. You're allowed to say that, but that's not the way we're trained. We're trained that the Rebbe viewed, and the way we should view every Jew is that every Jew is a diamond, and he's Hashem's child. And if you can impact one Jewish child, then that's your mission right now, right here. So what happened was like this. 2 or 3 kids showing up, their families. Like a half hour before the event, another woman that we knew that lived in town was in touch with my wife, but she wasn't really involved. We tried to get her to come a few times. She had like a 2-year-old daughter then. And she said, oh, can I come over with my daughter? So my wife said, sure. Anyways, so we had like 3 kids or 4 kids. We have a whole event. And she starts telling us, oh, yeah, I'm expecting soon. It's going to be a boy. And right away, by Chabad Rabbi, that means no. Is it going to be
Spidey senses.
Mitzvahs is so valuable, and the most valuable mitzvah is a bris, right? In many ways. Torah goes on and on about the bris, engraving godliness into a Jewish child that will last forever, a continuous mitzvah. Much power to that, to the mitzvah. And I ask her, what's your plans for a bris? She says, no, we're going to do it in the hospital. Or we're not going to do it, but if we do, we're going to do it in the hospital with a doctor. And mind you, her husband's not Jewish, so he's there also.
Is that a common thing in
Claremont? Unfortunately it is. Yeah, very common, very common. So point though is it's probably not like that in Toronto. Like one of the biggest challenges that we have here, probably way more than Canada. You guys probably more traditional, but by
Canada
us,
generally, has less of this.
Assimilation is a mess. Unfortunately, it's very sad, but Jewish families are being destroyed. It's just the reality, unfortunately. And point though is that so basically, I start schmoozing with her, but it's in the middle of the event, so it's kind of hard to like start bringing at the point. Anyways, after the event, I said, "Listen, I want you to sit down." I said, "Can we sit down for a few minutes?" She said, "Sure." I'm there with her husband and her. Now, what am I going to tell them to convince them? It's not easy. Like, a rabbi's going to come and do a circumcision. This is like a procedure. This is done by a hospital, by a professional doctor or pediatrician, someone that knows what they're doing, a rabbi. And as they start going on and on and on, they're listening. They're very sweet. And I said, I thought of an idea. I said, you know what? Let's call up a mohel, which is someone that does the circumcisions, professional. Let's call him up right now. Let's see what he has to say. So I get on my phone. I just call. I have a few boys, so I already done a few brisim of my own kids. So I call up the guy. His name is Yossi Strugo. He's fantastic, though. That's actually his uncle.
His uncle. Yeah, that's right.
So I call him up. He gets on the phone. I say, Yossi, I'm here with a beautiful couple. They're having a child soon, boy, and they want to know about a bris. He gets on the phone with them. 5 minutes later, maybe 5, maybe 10, I was right there with them. And he goes on, and the guy knows what he's talking about. He's so warm, he's so beautiful. And he explains the difference between how a mohel does a bris, how a person that's a professional Jewish, I don't know if you want to call it circumciser, but someone that does circumcisions. and versus a doctor, which, I mean, there's a lot of details, but the point though was he convinced them. After that was Purim time, after Pesach, about a month after, she had a baby. We arranged a bris. Yossi Strugo came in, and we did a bris in their house. No one was there. It was her father, her husband, me, maybe one other woman. Tiny bris. But the Jewish child is now entered in the covenant of Abraham. And that was like an incredible lesson for me as a Chabad Rabbi, because sometimes we forget about the value of one Jew. The value of one Jew. And this Jewish child will forever have this bris. And the schus, the merit that the child has, that he has bris, is why? Because me and my wife decided that, well, we're going to do the event. We could have easily canceled, and probably rightfully canceled. We could have. But the value of, we had a small crowd, and because of that, she came in, and it all worked out. And now, beautiful child has a bris. And by the way, just so you understand who this family is, they're not like close friends of ours. We speak once in a while. They haven't been in our house probably for over a year to any of our events. They're not like close buddy stuffs, but yet the child, and they're slowly coming around, but it's going to take time. But the child is circumcised. So that's just a powerful story for me, that I realized that every Jew really counts. And I'm so thankful, my wife and myself, and I'm sure so many other Chabad rabbis, of the Rebbe's vision, the Rebbe's dream, that there's a verse that says in regards to Mashiach, that when Mashiach comes, he's going to collect one Jew at a time. I think that's the translation of the verse, talking about Mashiach. But the Rebbe translated it as us, as Jews, that we have to collect every Jew at a time, one Jew at a time. And the power of Chabad, in many ways, I'm going to give you the secret. One of the secrets is the individual. We're not so into the massive crowds. It's beautiful. We love crowds. It's great. But the individual, every person really counts. They always say that whoever passed by the Rebbe by dollars, right? The Rebbe used to give $1 in the 1980s, later years in 1986 and on, I think, and Sunday dollars, which Shmuel can speak about, Rabbi Shmuel can speak about. But every time someone would pass by the Rebbe, it was for a few moments, a few seconds. But they felt like that moments, the Rebbe was entirely focused on them. He felt them. He saw them. He saw their world. And so I feel like the same. Sometimes we have that job also. Each individual. And, when there's a big crowd, we have to also focus on the individuals. Not the crowd. That's easy. The individuals. Say hi to every single one. Value each single one. And, so just some cool story.
It's really amazing. That's one of the biggest struggles that we have here in Toronto is there's, Jewish organizations and synagogues come a dime a dozen. There's just Chabad houses. There's very many. But then add on all the different Jewish organizations, and then that's just, how about just the religious Jewish organizations, and then how about the Jewish organizations outside of the religious community that focus more on the cultural or the national aspect. There's so much available here, and I find that a lot of people, their perception, both though the constituents and also the leadership, is just like events. If you have a huge Jewish federation, we just had a huge citywide event for Walk for Israel that had 50,000 people. It's numbers, people, big events, this, and it's so hard. It's so hard to keep focused on the individuals because you have to have the balance. And then in a place where you're at, you're put in a position where that's your job. Your job is to find every new person. And sometimes they maybe have the opposite struggle, which is not focusing enough on the cohesive aspect of it, of bringing together those individuals. But you've done that, right? You've taken a bunch of individual human connections, and you brought them together into a community that didn't exist before. I came here to add whatever that my wife and I came here to add whatever we can to an existing community. Part of a massive operation that spans the citywide. And although over the years, we've been here for 5 years, I've ingrained into my brain the basic principle that if it weren't for me being here, then things wouldn't be the way they are, and things wouldn't have the flavor that they are. And so obviously our contribution is huge and is necessary. But you're like, I think in your case, it's so visible that like you take nothing, or like quote unquote nothing, and you build something. That's awesome. That's just, what you have. You have services every week now. I remember you started with like once a month.
We had a pretty crazy story. But basically, we got a Torah, and the condition of getting the Torah was that we have to have services every week. And this is just when we moved to town. This is like 6 to 8 months since we moved to town, and it was never my dream to have services right away. My dream was more events in the beginning, Torah classes, relationships. Like, services is intimidating. You pray, Hebrew words. It's like, it could be boring. But I put myself to the challenge because I really wanted the Torah. And so the guy said, okay, you got the Torah, but you got to have services every week for a full year. And so we did it. And I I literally knocked on doors of people that I met once or not even. I said, Alan, just giving you a name. Alan, this is the deal. We have someone that's giving us $80,000 on condition that we have services every week. It will support our community. Would you do it? Oh, wow. Yeah, I'll do it. It's okay. It's not really $80,000, but it's a Torah. The cost of Torah is $80,000, and it's really worth much more. And so I did that. I literally knocked on many doors, and we made it happen for a full year, and now we're going on year 3, basically. So
that's what you've done too. Because I remember you just started. I was at your house 2 years ago exactly, and you had just started, and you were stressing out, but it's so awesome. I give it to you, man. Starting from scratch like that. What is it like? Okay, so you live kind of far out, but you got a Jewish community locally, somewhat. You got kids. How, like, everyone here knows, it's like here it's of course taken for granted. If I want right now to go get a kosher bottle of milk, I drive down the block to Freshco, the closest supermarket with a massive kosher section, grab whatever groceries I need, bring them home. We got kosher, right? I take my kids to school. One kid goes to daycare across the street. The other kid goes to Cheder, a 5-minute drive away. And I'm considered still, by the way, outside of the main Jewish part of, northern Jewish part of Toronto. But you live out there. So how does it work? Food, school, I don't know. You go to a minyan every day? Like, what about your, like, how do you take care of your own Jewish needs?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. There's more kosher in Orlando than there is in Morristown, New Jersey. So
that's true.
I come from Morristown, New Jersey, but I have more kosher here. Orlando has a bunch of restaurants, 2 or 3 restaurants. It depends on the time. Sometimes we have 4. In other words, sometimes they open shop, and a few months later it doesn't work out, so they close. But we have a lot of kosher here now. We have a bakery, which is right next to the school. So let me back up. Chabad of South Orlando is without traffic is a half hour, but as Orlando is one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and for sure in the state of Florida, the traffic is enormous. It's crazy. So in the morning, it could take me 45 minutes to an hour. Going back home is rush hour. It's a mess. Afternoon, we end school at 4, so it's a mess. It could take an hour plus. Usually it's about an hour. So yeah, we go there for school. We're blessed that we have school. I'll tell you that I traveled the world I don't want to push it, but I did travel a lot of countries as a yeshiva bacher, as a yeshiva boy. I always had a passion.
I remember when you were collecting stamps in your passport.
That's right. It's already full, don't worry. I had a passion. I still do. Still have the travel bug, big time. And whenever I could, I went to Australia, like Kazakhstan, Rabbi Shmuel mentioned. But I was in a lot of places, Asia, India, China. I could go on to Thailand. But I did a lot of Europe, and I did a little bit of South America. I traveled. I've done my share. And as I grew up, I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I thought I'd be a Chabad Rabbi in China. Like, I was there twice. Or Peru, I was there twice. So I was like, this is my place. I'm gonna, But as I grew up a little bit more, I'm like, oh, you know what? There's a challenge not having a good Jewish day school for the kids. I see the Chabad rabbis worldwide, wherever, they struggle. You have kids at home, and you have to bring in either, teachers from abroad for a year. It's such a strong, it's an immense struggle. And you want to educate your kids, good Jewish kids with the good Jewish values, and social life could also be a challenge. So I decided, you know what, I want education for my kids. Traveled more, and I'm like, I actually want to be in America as well. So that's how I ended up. Okay, I'm going to go Chabad Rabbi. If I could, I'll try to be in America. But I never imagined myself in Florida. Like I was like, okay, like Arizona. I'm a mountain type of guy. I love nature, mountains, waterfalls. That's my thing. And I was like, oh, I'm going to for sure end up like in Arizona. Like Sedona was a dream of mine way back when, but anyways, as I grew up, I had all these ideas, maybe in like California here and there. But my wife is from Florida, and there was a great opportunity here, and we ended up in Florida. And it's not. I'll tell you honestly, Jewish life is not a struggle in regards to kosher food. There's a kosher Winn-Dixie, which is one of the big brands in the state of Florida. There's a nice kosher section there. A lot of kosher food
nearby your house. You're saying?
No, it's not nearby. My house is nearby the school, which is in Orlando area, but it's 45 minutes drive. It's fine. Also, we do the big orders of meat and dairy we get from Miami. We do these big wholesale. We get boxes and boxes. I have like 4 freezers, so you could just imagine how we do it here. But it's not. I always thought it'd be much more difficult, especially if I would be in nowhere. Chabad Rabbi in the middle of nowhere. So.
You're still doing that commute. That commute is,
It's a struggle. The commute is a struggle, but you get used to it. Kids get used to it. It's just part of life. And the struggle is that there's only how many hours of a day do you have? Think about it. Your kids come home from school, let's say 4 or 5. I mean, now it's 5 by us. And from 5 and on, you're totally occupied, right? In fact, we started this podcast late. Why? Because one of my kids were up, right? It's a struggle. Every parent knows. And in the morning, what's up?
Quarter to 11 Sunday night, we're filming.
Yes. Oh my gosh, look at you, Shmuel.
I'll tell you one of the most powerful things I've heard from somebody. It's actually somebody you know very well. It was when we had already decided we're moving to Toronto. We were still living in Crown Heights. We were getting our stuff ready and moving. I was like really close. It was either right before we moved here or right after we moved here.
You're getting old. You don't remember.
What?
You're getting old. You don't remember.
Exactly. I was on the phone with Mendel Bendit, who used to live in Morristown, and is an amazing person. Him and his wife.
He lives in Pittsburgh now.
What'd you say?
Yeah, Morristown. He lives in Crown Heights.
He lives in Crown Heights now. He has a 2 brothers-in-law, a sister-in-law, and a brother-in-law that live here in Toronto. So all in the family. But basically, it was as if he read my mind, because I didn't really say what my feeling to him, but I kind of had. We were moving to Toronto. We were super excited for the opportunity, but I had this kind of like, it was the ideologue inside of me in those days that at this point not there anymore. Like especially after all this experience, where I was thinking, like the elite. Even I could like guys like you that are schlepping every day to take their kids to school and have to calculate when they're going to be able to get their kosher produce. And we're talking about anything from you to the guys that are schlepping. Like I got a friend of Remel Glick that lives in the middle of Indiana. He goes to Chicago. Chicago's a 2-hour drive, right? To get basic kosher.
Rabbi Kevin, same thing.
Rabbi Kevin also goes to either to Cleveland or to Pittsburgh. So I thought that was elite, and that something was missing in my line of work that I had taken on, and I didn't express to Mendel, but we were talking on the phone and talking about Toronto versus how like the vibe and this aspect, and he's like, he says, listen to me. He says, the best thing for your shlichus, for your service as a Chabad Rabbi, is that you live in the middle of a Jewish community. He says, somebody that lives outside, they're schlepping their kids. You have a classmate, Shalom Ber Dubov, right, from Morristown. His parents would drive an hour and a half each way to take their kids to school. I remember his father coming to yeshiva talking about it. Okay, he says, by the time you take your kids to school, by the time you do your kosher shopping while you're out, half or more of your day is gone. It's poof.
That is the biggest struggle. There's not enough hours of the day.
Exactly. And so he says to me, you have no waste. You have no spent time on any of this stuff. Take your kids to school. You drive straight to your office, and it's my life. I get right to work, hit the ground running, and I have a full day. Right. I get to my office. By the time I take my kids to school, I'm at my office somewhere between 9 and 9:30 on a regular day. I sit down, and first thing I do is Shlichut and Rambam. I do my daily learning, get my daily Judaism done at the first thing, or else I risk not doing it. And then boom, from 10:30 until 5:30, somewhere between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, boom, like I'm nonstop. I'm working, right? So many people in our field just don't have that. And so he says that's the best thing. He says you don't have to spend any time in the car. You don't have to spend any extra time making different calculations about the logistics of how everything is going to work out. It's all there for you. You've been put in a place where all you have to do is focus on your mission. Stay mission focused. And look, it's totally right.
You know what you're missing? You're missing bonding with your children. When you have to drive them every day, you spend hours on the car with them. The bonding time that you have with your children. I'm just telling you, you're missing out. You're making my life difficult. Don't worry, my life is great. Don't worry about it. I'm okay.
Kudos to you, brother. So let me get so.
Go.
What is the style of people that you have more older, you have more younger, you have a mix? What are you doing? Okay, so we spoke that you have your basic holiday programs, you have, now your synagogue services, but when I get a newsletter from you, it's full of different things, right? And I still, every time I get a newsletter from you in the mail, I pop it open. You're going to get one from me soon, and hopefully you'll be impressed. But so this is what we do. We send each other newsletters to remind each other that we're actually doing something with our lives. But what do you do? Like, what are the demographics? What kind of people you have over there? And what are you doing? What are you doing that's unique? What kind of projects do you have going on? What's your forte now?
So you're asking good questions. Our demographics is we have 55 plus communities here, which are a bunch of HOA, which is the communities that you got to be 55 plus to live there. So we have a lot of that. That's the first demographic. A lot of Jews there. The other demographic is the new growth in town, which is a lot of young families. Land is a bit more expensive. This is a little less expensive. It's a suburb of a city. Nighttime, you could drive there. It's like 35, 40 minutes. It's not bad at all. And so a lot of young families, and we have a lot, thank God, coming in. Everything is relative. It's not Toronto a lot, but for us, if there's 100 young Jewish families, that's fantastic.
That's huge.
So there's a lot of that now. Go ahead.
What's the total number? Like, how many people do you have?
I don't have a number. I don't know. I'm not sure.
You must have a list.
I'm not going to tell you my list. Should I start going through numbers? No, it's let's say stuff like has 1,000 Jewish families altogether, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. It's hard to know. The difference again. You're coming from Toronto. Toronto has a massive Jewish population.
I have 1,000 families in one square kilometer.
That's the difference between me and you. Here, when I came to town, we're starting from scratch. Every Jew that I meet is literally like, okay, you're another person on my list now. And so, our list has, thank God, we're 300 plus, in just our list. But that's starting from scratch. But it's growing constantly, thank God, So going back to your questions before I was rudely interrupted. Yeah, don't mess. So what was your question again? What do you want to hear from me?
What are you up to? What are you guys doing?
What are you doing? Do everything that every Chabad Rabbi does. I find that real, authentic relationships with people, spending time with people, learning individually with people. That's one thing I try to focus on. Another thing is, and I'm trying to get better at now, is Torah. Sitting down and having more Torah classes. There's nothing that bonds us together as Jewish people than the Torah. Nothing. In fact, if you look at our history, we're good at debating and we're good at disagreeing with each other. even in Israel before October 7th, and even now after, a month after October 7th, a few weeks after, we were all united. But at this point, unfortunately, that's the way Jews are. We're not good at uniting. Now, when someone's stricken, if there's crisis, we're great at uniting. The point, though, is, just to go back to some Torah, it says about the Jewish people when they, we just came off from Shavuos, the holiday of Shavuos, of the giving of the Torah. So the Jewish people camped by Mount Sinai, and the wording that uses is Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Har. And Vayichan is actually, which means the Jewish people camped at the Mount Sinai, the foot of the mountain. And the wording they use is singular wording. Vayichan means, and he dwelt, so to say. It should have said and they. And the reason why it says singular is because it was the only time in our history that the Jewish people were really united. They were all there for the same purpose. Their entire being was there for one purpose, to receive the Torah, and they were all united. And in fact, if you analyze the verse, it says the Jewish people dwelled on the foot of the mountain, or the exact translation of Neged Har means correspondent to the mountain. In other words, against the mountain, right by the mountain. So what does the mountain represent? The mountain represents Torah, right? The Jewish people received the Torah on Mount Sinai. That's what the mountain represents. What unites the Jewish people through history? Maybe you can even ask further. What's the secret of our survival throughout our history? What kept us together? What kept us strong throughout all the persecutions and all the struggles and everything we've been through is the Torah. So I feel like in our community, we have the same idea. We have to have the same vision, which is Torah. Torah unites the Jewish people. Torah keeps us together. And actually, this week's sermon, oh, you should come to my sermon, buddy. Oh my gosh. But yeah, this week's sermon was all about the idea of adding a Torah.
You don't record it, do you?
On Shabbos? No, it's not. It's out of style in my synagogue. But the point, though, is that one of the things that we spoke about this week is adding a Torah. And just to make it practical, there's a beautiful booklet that you can subscribe to. It costs a few bucks a month. It's called Chayenu. And with the Chayenu, it's a booklet that has all the main foundational Jewish teaching studies. And it's split up throughout the week. So you have the Chumash, which is the Bible. We have Tanya, which is Hasidic philosophy. You have the Maimonides. You have so many fascinating ideas that you have all in this one booklet. And it's split up daily. And so you could add in Torah. It's also an app. And it's a few bucks, and you're bringing Torah into your life. I told the people, this is what I said in my synagogue. I said, let me tell you something. You come to synagogue, you get inspired. The rabbi spoke well. It's nice and dandy, but you didn't bring it into your life. When you take a book and you bring it to your house, now your house becomes a dwelling place, not only for you, but Hashem could dwell there also. And I always say it's like having a partner. You want to make sure you have the best partner when you go into business. Well, you want to make sure that your home is the holiest and most special of places. And that's when you have a partner in your home also. And that's Hashem. Bring Torah into your life. It unites the Jewish people. And think about how many people are learning the daily Chumash. Daily. Hundreds of thousands? You are part of it. You're part of the Jewish people. And some of them are like, oh, I'm not religious. I'm not this. I'm not observant. Dude, you're Jewish. I don't care. You're Jewish. You're part of us. Be part of it. So that was one of I don't know why I brought that up. Oh, so Torah. That's one of the focuses I'm trying to get into my community. Is got to bring more Torah. There's nothing that unites the Jewish people more than Torah. Education and the effects are there. We're only here for a few years, but the impact when Torah is internalized in the Jewish home, it's unbelievable the changes that you see time and time again. It doesn't just change the home, it changes the person, it changes the community. Right? It's a domino effect. This guy, we have someone in our community that went kosher. And the beauty is she's very close to a lot of other members. And they go out to a restaurant that's not kosher. And she's going to sit down there with nothing. And they all know there. She's keeping kosher. She's committed. And how do I know this? Because the other lady will come over to me and this happened. She says, I was just out with, we'll just call her Jessica. And Jessica didn't eat with us. We all ate. She didn't eat. And she was saying, wow, it's amazing. One day I'll get there. The impact is amazing. And so this is through Torah, through education, and Baruch Hashem, we're blessed to be part of the Rebbe's army.
Wow, that's awesome. Look, you asked me at the beginning, how are we going to get through an entire hour? I just want you to know that it's already 53 minutes. And
54, 1 second.
And it felt like it went very fast. gonna wrap up in a minute, but I want to ask you like this: let's you mentioned briefly October 7th, Israel. It's something that it's just it still rules, the narrative here, and I think it should. I think, while our people is in pain, we shouldn't ignore the pain. We should deal with what's going on, and that's like you said, it's what unites us, or at least what should unite us. And it's something that whatever anybody thinks about it, we're living with this situation. I'll put it in perspective here. In Toronto, we've got Camp Palestine watermelon in the local University of Toronto, and a police force that is not being allowed to clear it out, even though they've been illegally encamping there for 2 weeks. We've got synagogues shot up. We've got Jewish businesses burned down. We've got Jews attacked in the streets. This place, Canada, is turning into absolutely, I don't even want to go there. Okay, this place it's dismal. It's absolutely dismal what's happening over here in the country, in our city. But we're seeing the Jewish people are uniting here like never before, and it's surreal. What's the I guess what's the atmosphere like in Orlando? It happens to be that Orlando, like Central Florida, has like a serious neo-Nazi problem. Do you ever have anything to do with that?
It's actually funny. One of the centers of the neo-Nazi is actually the city that I service right here. But
Claremont?
there's never been anti-Semitism here. I always tell people, let me answer the question. First of all, I want to answer the general question of how do Jews deal with hate. And I'm a young rabbi. I don't have much to say, but I'll just say it like this. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, it's a famous quote of his, former chief rabbi of England, may he rest in peace, said like this: people respect others that respect themselves. If you respect yourself, people respect you. And I tell this to my community time and time again. I'm a Jew. You can see me from a mile away, maybe 2 miles away. I got a beard, kippah, tzitzit. You know what I mean? I'm running around Jewish. You know what I mean? That's what I do for a living. And I said, people are like, Rabbi, there's anti-Semitism in Groveland, in Leesburg. Buddy, I go to these places daily. I've never experienced anti-Semitism. When you're proud of who you are, when you represent something, you stand strong. This is who I am. This is who we are. People respect that. And, unfortunately, what's going on right now in the world, especially social media and the news outlets, it's a modern day blood libel. There's just no way to put it. If you think about it, if we close our eyes a little bit and we look at our history, blood libels were like a horrible thing. Literally, an anti-Semite would come and say that, the matzah that we baked for Passover had blood in it, right? Now, we don't even have to go into the details of how that's so not logical. First of all, we're not allowed to use blood. Second of all, blood doesn't taste that good from experience. I'm joking. I don't have any experience, right? I don't know how blood tastes. But it's just not a thing that Jews do because it's pretty, random to say that in matzah it would be bloody. I mean, whatever. These days, what's going on in Israel, from the beginning of the war, for example, we all know when the hospital there was a rocket that was thrown in the hospital, and right away the media all over was saying that 500 Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, were killed, right? Half of them bothered saying that within a few hours Israel proved that it was clearly rockets thrown from Hamas. But no one bothered saying that. This is modern.
No one actually, very few people actually.
By the way, it wasn't 500 people, and how would you even count 500 people so fast? And how many? The numbers were crazy. But regardless, nobody bothered. You know what? This is modern day blood libel. When you blame the Jewish people, and it's so not logical, but yet we're able to do it and just shut up. And when you see what's going on in the UN, and you see what's going on, unfortunately, we're in the war for 8 or 9 months now. And every day, this is modern day blood libels. And I think, I don't know who your audience is, but I'll tell you something. This may sound a little depressing, but I'm going to say it anyways. In the 1930s, 1920s, if you go to Washington, D.C., you go to Holocaust Museum. It's very interesting how they built the museum. Were you ever there?
Yeah, specifically that Holocaust Museum.
Yeah,
yeah. But Yad Vashem is I think is very similar.
I'm going to Washington, D.C. specifically. I'll tell you why. Because it's 3 floors, the Holocaust Museum, and it's very interesting. The first floor is prior to the Holocaust, the 1930s, 1920s. The second floor is the Holocaust, and the third floor is post-Holocaust. camps, refugee camps, and Jews trying to rebuild themselves. It's very smart how they built this museum. In order for the Holocaust to happen, you needed to have 1928, the 1920s, 1930s. You needed to indoctrinate a community. You needed to indoctrinate the whole Europe of hatred towards the Jewish people. And only then could the Holocaust happen and be able to kill 6 million Jews and no one defend us.
You also
Go ahead.
The point. Sorry, I'm sorry. The point that a lot of people, historians, people leave out of the narrative is at the same time you also had to have the indifference of Western countries, of the United States, of England, of Canada, all these places, of Australia, these places, and in England specifically, not letting Jews into into the land of Israel. That was also just as necessary of an ingredient as the hatred, the indoctrination.
I just want to bring up one point. The point is that now we're at a gap. We have an interesting gap right now. Anti-Semitism is on a rise. Now, if you think about it, in America, for example, statistically, 80% of America, or maybe even more, supports the Jewish people, supports Israel, supports destroying Hamas. They're terrorists like ISIS. There's no difference. They want to kill Israel and America. They want to kill the West. However, the 20% are very loud, and the 80% are very quiet. And it's us, the Jewish people, which are very small in numbers, but we have a voice. It's our time now to educate the world. We can't shut up anymore. And therefore, as a rabbi, I'm going to challenge you as well. You have to go to the local schools and start speaking at the local schools. Who else, if not the Jewish communities? And start making appointments or bring them to your synagogue. Let them have a field trip at a synagogue. Now is our opportunity to educate the youngsters, not to go with the 20% that are haters for no good reason, but rather understand, what the Jewish people are doing and have no choice but to destroy enemies.
Moshe, wow, L'chaim. I don't remember last time we spent an entire hour together, but first of all, is
that a good thing or a bad thing? Just asking.
It's well, it depends. I think. Oh, when last time we spent an hour together is when we drove to Boston and back in November. Yeah, we spent more than an hour. I think there was a lot more than an hour. I think that was
snoring in the back. Okay.
Oh yeah, when my makeshift bed in the back of that was a great. By the way, it was a great road trip.
You're lucky I drove nicely.
What? I
said you're lucky I drove nicely.
That's right. We had a good car. Anyway, Moshe, wishing you a lot of success in what you're doing. I want to thank you personally for joining the first guest on MRP. Guys, all those listening, I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. As usual, I love hearing Duffy and I love hearing your feedback. Unless you're one of the Chabadniks who just likes to, express your opinions about different things that we say. All the time.
Say it. It's okay. Shmuel, you get this.
Say your opinion. No, say your opinions. It's like I tell people. Sometimes I tell people in the synagogue. I've taken your suggestion, I've put it in the suggestion box, and someone will get back to you in 5 to 8 business days. No, we love it. We love the feedback, and we want to get more of it. If you like this episode, give us the encouragement. Let's do more of these. If you didn't, then depending on how many of you.
The warning is anybody that's going to message me in regards to this podcast will also, no problem, you can message me, but I will ask you for money for my Chabad center. So you be careful. I'm going to challenge
Very
you.
Good.
Be careful.
And speaking of money, if the view counts on MRP are growing, the audience is growing, the reach is getting out there. We're on all the podcasts. We're on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube and we're on Instagram. If you would like to sponsor an episode or partner with us to do a product placement advertisement, we are super open to that. Just reach out to me in my email. You'll see it in the show notes, or send me a DM on send us to the official account DM on Instagram. But with that, Moshe, thank you, and guys, keep it Jewish. Do more Jewish. That's the motto of the day. Do more Jewish. I think that also applies. I think this applies in Florida too as well. In Florida, can they do more Jewish?
We're all in. I got Duffy Hills here. I don't know if that helps, but anyways.
Got to get you one of these hats. Okay, Moshe, see you.
All right, all the best.
Bye.